What is a verb? There's a chance you started using it even before you could speak properly. What is more, there's no way you can have a proper conversation without using one of them. If you've always struggled with verb tenses, conjugations and the like, this video could be the missing piece of the puzzle. Generally speaking, a verb can be thought of as an action, something you do with your hands, your feet, or your mouth, like run, sing, dance, climb, drive.
Enough! I get the point!
But it can also refer to non-physical processes, such as those that happen in your mind, like think, imagine, or believe. Verbs that indicate actions are called dynamic or action verbs. Those verbs are sometimes used with continuous tenses to indicate that the action is not finished or is temporary. The other verbs, meaning non-physical verbs, are called stative verbs. They typically represent mental processes, emotions, or concepts. Some stative verbs can be used as action verbs and thus in continuous tenses when the subject is actively involved in the process. Take the verb think in those two sentences. What do you think of the second one? Is that sentence correct? We know the verb think is a stative verb, and stative verbs are not typically used with continuous tenses. Is that what you're thinking? You're right. However, the verb think here is not simply an already formed idea or a passive process. Rather, it's something in which the subject is actively involved and is not finished. Take the verbs see and look, listen and hear. You start seeing when you set your eyes on something. If you continue seeing with attention or interest, you're in effect looking. Hence, those verbs imply a continued effort on your part. The other ones are processes that can happen even if you do absolutely nothing. That's why you can't say I'm seeing, but you can say I'm looking at it. The latter is active or deliberate. It's something you choose to do. Okay, you can actually say I'm seeing if you're referring to an immediate or a future action you're going to take. So here's a quick summary. Action verbs indicate actions. They don't have to be physical. They can refer to mental processes as long as the subject is actively involved. Stative verbs, on the other hand, can refer to states, emotions, or other abstract verbs. They are not typically used with continuous tenses. Here's a quick quiz. Which of these verbs are stative verbs? Which of these sentences are not correct? But there's more to verbs than just that. We could think of verbs as a country where the verb to be is the king, the modal verbs as its ministers, the rest of the verbs as the people, some of whom follow a certain custom while others don't. Like the people, regular verbs follow a pattern or rule when forming their past tenses and their past participle. Irregular verbs don't follow that rule. Just like different time zones, verbs can have tenses, like present, past, or future. Like different climates, they can have moods, like imperative, subjunctive, or indicative. Just as a country can have different dialects, a verb can also have voices, like the active or the passive voice. How different is the verb to be from the other verbs? Let's break it down. For one thing, in the present tense, most verbs have two conjugations or forms. One for the third person singular, which I call the three B's, he, she, it, and the other one for the other persons. The verb to be is an exception. It doesn't have one or two forms, but rather three forms. What is it? Is it B1, B2, and B3? Of course not. You can't even use the infinitive form of the verb. The forms are am, is, and are. Also, in the past tense, most verbs have only one form for all subjects. However, the verb to be has not one, but two forms. One for the singular and one for the plural. When do we use the actual infinitive of the verb to be? The infinitive form of the verb to be, which is be, can only be used with modal verbs, like when you form the future simple tense with the verb to be. Okay, what is the infinitive anyway? If a verb is not conjugated, we say that it's in its infinitive form. It's very much as if it had an infinity of options. You see, it's not taken yet. Nope. You can only use verbs in the infinitive with certain verbs. To use a subject with a verb, you generally need to conjugate the verb first and make sure it matches the subject. Verbs in the infinitive form are preceded by the preposition to, except for the modal verbs. When they're not preceded by to, we call them bare infinitives. Modal verbs can be tricky, but they can also be incredibly helpful when used correctly. We use them for giving advice, asking for permission, or talking about possibilities. Here's what you shouldn't do when you use those verbs. Never use the preposition to before or after them, except for these ones. Also, they don't like the verb to do sitting before them in a sentence. And this is another thing that makes the verb to be, as well as the modal verbs, different from the other verbs. Most verbs need help with negatives and questions. Special verbs like the verb to be or the modal verbs don't need such help. Well, if you don't need help, you have to carry the load yourself. Well, that's what those verbs do. For negatives, we simply add not after them. And for the interrogative forms, we place those verbs before the subject. And that's about it. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe.